Hello and welcome again to the Llama Commerce Show. It is Friday. I think it's February 21st.
It is indeed.
Awesome.
It is indeed.
We are live here. We're happy to be. We're here to do the same thing we do every week. That is to demystify e-commerce into digestible, actionable bites. And today we're talking about one of my favorite topics. We're talking about data.
Data, numbers. That's something that can make some people feel a little bit queasy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Other people gets them all excited. So it depends on your personality.
So before we jump into it, though, if you haven't noticed at the bottom, I'm Kurt Theobald. I'm the CEO of Classy Llama.
And I'm Brett Curry. I am the lead strategist at Classy Llama.
And this is our little armless trophy friend. He's actually a table tennis player from 1999. He won second place in the 7th grade.
Critical part of the show, Kurt.
Very critical because this indicates who's delivering the most value to our market, in our opinion, and we fight tooth and nail for it all show.
And I was crunching some data on our show recently, and I have found that this gravitates towards my side a little bit more than it does to yours.
Really? You've been looking at the data. Is that one of your key metrics? We're going to talk about that today. What's your key metric? So, anyway, we called it going beyond revenue. And actually, I think it was just beyond revenue.
Beyond revenue.
Beyond revenue. Because what happens a lot of times we find that merchants are just looking at their top line and then not looking at the key metrics, but we also find this other interesting set of merchants that are data miners, and they fall down into the caves of data, never to be seen again.
And they need to be rescued. They're trapped in the bottom of a data well.
That's right.
No light, and they need to be rescued.
That's right. So we're going to try to help both sets of merchants today. So Brett, if you want to kick us off.
Absolutely. So I want to share a quote. This is one of my favorite quotes when it comes to analytics. This comes from a guy named Avinash Kaushik, who I consider to be like the Michael Jordan of analytics. Really sharp guy. And he talks about several things when it comes to analytics.
You're on the wrong slide.
I am on the wrong slide.
We need to go backwards.
We need to go
You're
backwards.
going to see everything we're about to talk about in reverse. We probably don't even need to talk about it at this point.
We can just skip it all.
Okay, I guess.
But he says to focus on the critical few rather than the meaningless many. So for most businesses, you're going to have like 3 or 4 key metrics that you need to measure and track and watch religiously, and a lot of the other things you can not pay attention to.
And I think
focus on the
key,
critical few.
That meaningless factor, because here's 3 core points of data, and these are like my core 3. I should like label these and trademark this. But the core 3 of data is, first of all, you got to have accurate data. Secondly, you have to attach the right meaning to that data, and third, you have to apply some action according to that meaning, or it's worthless. That's the only way you can derive any value from data of any kind. It doesn't matter if you're playing cards or if you're analyzing your Fortune 500 business. It's the same thing. You have to have those 3 things.
Accurate data, know what it means, and then take action based on
right.
that. And one of the things that I think you have to do is you have to ask meaningful questions, questions that are going to lead you somewhere, questions that your analytics can answer, but questions that once you know the answer to, you know what to do. You know what to change or what action to take. We run into some merchants who will say things like, what is our bounce rate? Or what is our average time on site?
And it's probably because they read some blog article that said you need to know your bounce rate.
Yeah,
and
bounce rate impacts SEO or it
impacts
whatever.
Right.
And so they ask that question. That's not a meaningful question.
Right.
We could look at what the bounce rate is or what your time on site is.
What are you going to do with
a little bit. But what are you going to do with that?
Right.
Absolutely.
So I think the key is you want to pivot. We're going to talk about some questions that you can ask that are kind of generic, good questions. But you really need to pivot your questions from your core. What's your value proposition? What's your target audience? What changes are you making in your business? You want to make sure those changes are actually producing positive results. And data will save you a lot of grief in helping you see that in a very scientific, meaningful way.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a few questions that they can ask at a generic level.
Man, that was good. Dang it.
Awesome.
Okay, so
go ahead, try to win it back.
So Kurt now has a trophy in front of him.
Yeah.
So what traffic sources drive buyers? So you have to understand this. You have to know what traffic sources are driving your buyers. Where are your buyers coming from? Because if you don't know that, Kurt, then you don't know where to focus. Now, you brought up a really good point earlier. Not just knowing what traffic sources drive buyers, but knowing what are you paying money for? What are you investing in to drive traffic? And what is the return you're getting from those investments?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. So a couple of reports, we'll actually show you these inside of analytics, and obviously don't want to get too bogged down here, but want to show a couple of reports that you should be looking at. So we'll look at those right now. The first one is the all traffic report. So if you look at the all traffic report, we got this broken down by traffic sources. I always like to compare date ranges. So rather than just looking at one date range, I think you should always compare to something so that you know, well, is this good or bad? I don't know. I'm not measuring it against anything. So you can't tell. Look at either month over month.
I disagree with this because typically you need to be going year over year, Brett, not month over month.
Yeah, you got to wait for it. Hey, wait for it. You jumped a little bit too early.
Did I? Oh, I'm so sorry.
You have to look at both. You got to look at month over month.
Are you trying to one-up me?
Yes, I am. I'm going to slide the trophy over here.
Well, first you got to prove it. What do you mean?
So you got to look at month over month to see what's trending now.
Okay.
All right. And now seasonality can really impact that, obviously, because if you're coming off of December, which is huge, January is going to be down no matter what. But you need to look at month over month, also year over year. And I also like to look at week over week.
Okay, I agree with this actually. You do need to see what your changes that are taking place right now,
your trends
how's
right
it influence. And if you do a year over year and then you do a month over month, you get a feel for any of those seasonal fluctuations that are natural in your business. But you can also see if you're making improvements even over a 30-day period of time.
Yeah.
So Brett's totally right. And that you're right. That was just silly.
Thank you. Slide it over. Yes.
Okay.
But we have a merchant who June and July is their biggest month just because of the nature of their business. So you should look at July versus June, but then also compare to the year prior to.
I had it happen so many times where clients are looking at the data and they're like, we're losing, we're down. But if you look at year over year, the problem is they're just looking at what happened last month compared to this month, and they feel bad about it. They get really stressed out about it. But in reality, if you look at year over year, it might even be better.
Right.
It's just they're not thinking about it in the context of their seasonal fluctuations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're looking at a few things. For this merchant, Google cost per click or Google AdWords is driving the majority of their conversions, 730 versus 663 in the previous period. So you're seeing what's driving buyers, but don't just look at transactions. Look at the e-commerce conversion rate and see what methods of traffic are driving the highest conversion rates. So you can see, is this quality traffic? These are actually really high conversion rates as far as industry averages go. But if these numbers were really low, or if the site-wide average was, let's say, 4%, which is huge, and then we found a source of traffic that was only 1%, we need to look at that traffic source a little closer.
But you know, I know how to beat these conversion rates, though. The way that you beat them consistently is you sell all your products for free. You get really, really crazy high conversion rates then. So
that's true. You just
sell back to the middle.
Get all your products.
But I will say, okay, this is really actually valuable. That was junk, but this is valuable. Per visit value, and I think you actually go into this in a moment. And I'm sorry, I keep getting ahead of you. I am so sorry. I know.
Just about analytics.
But per visit value is so valuable because it combines your average order value and your conversion rate into one metric, and it allows you to look at what can you absorb in terms of your cost per acquisition.
Yeah.
So if you're making investments,
how much can we pay to get a visitor to our site? That's a really important question. It's actually one of the next ones.
So don't just think about per visit value as like if you're not generating enough value on that visit, then you can't invest in it. Let's say you're spending $3 a click and you're only generating $1.50 per visit, and then you go to the gross profit line, and now it's even more dismal. It still might be okay because you're acquiring a customer, and you have to look at it from a lifetime value or a 12-month value of that customer. Yeah. So think about it in those terms. You're acquiring.
You may want to just break even on the front end.
Maybe
potentially.
Maybe even lose money. Because think about it. If you're losing $3 on that acquisition, you spent $3 to acquire a customer. Is that worth it over the next 12 months?
Could be.
It could be. It just
get your systems in place, and if you have the repeat purchase mechanisms in place, then it could absolutely.
But think about it. The more money you can spend per acquisition, the more competitive you become in any marketing channel because you can apply more funds to it. To acquire those customers, it makes you more competitive.
That's why the big players typically win, because they can spend more per acquisition. But if you have a system in place where you can take that one-time buyer and turn them into a repeat buyer, and you know that with some predictability, then you can spend more on the front end. So that should be another topic for another show.
Yeah, I mean, they can spend more per acquisition only because they know they can. There's a lot of small players that absolutely can spend just like the best of them, but they don't know it because they're thinking about, I'm dead, make enough money to make my money back on this sale, so I don't want, so I'm cutting it. But they need to think long term. They need to think next 12 months, next 36 months. What's your lifetime value?
So average visit value, so you can know what you can spend per visit, but then also be thinking about lifetime value.
Absolutely.
Okay. So good. So the next thing you want to look at then is when you're looking at traffic sources, don't just look at those that are closing. Look at the assist men as well. Absolutely. Who's assisting? My son's playing basketball this year, and he made the comment. He's 11. He made the comment the other day that people only care about those that score. People that pass, that doesn't matter. But it's so not true. If you think about some great players like John Stockton and Rajon Rondo, current players, those that can pass and that can assist, that is huge for the success of the team.
Think of all you looked at was your transactions per channel or your conversion rate. it's like you cut all those guys that pass the ball to the guys that shoot and score.
Yeah,
it's like, what are you doing? You're crazy.
When you see these trends inside of analytics, you know what? This one source of traffic doesn't close all the time, but it's assisting everywhere.
But this was really hard to actually gather until Google Analytics made some changes over the past few years, and we really appreciate that. So thank you, Google.
So it's under conversions, under multi-channel funnels, and then look under the top conversion path. I like the visual of that. There are a couple ways you can look at it. Assisted conversions will get you the same data. But it's going to show you, paid search, then direct, paid search, a couple of direct visits. Just going to give you these a different look at how things are working for your business in terms of who's assisting these conversions.
But again, any data you're looking at, if you don't know what it means, it's worthless.
Yep.
So you've got to make sure either you've got to figure out what it means, or you've got to find somebody that does. But again, you should be bringing questions to the data. And that'll clarify what the meaning is. You'll find the right data if you're bringing your questions to the data.
Yeah. And then you want to ask what sources of traffic are not converting and why. And maybe a good place to start is, hey, I know people in my industry get a lot of good traffic from this source, but it ain't working for me. So why is that?
And also, flip that on its head, what landing pages are not converting and why? So now you flip it on its head, you look at, oh my gosh, I didn't actually look at, I just want everybody to know, I did not look at these very detailed.
You did not look at this.
I am totally beating it in the punch every time.
You did, man.
I'm amazing.
Yeah. All right, keep the trophies. So if we look at landing pages, so it may just be that source of traffic is fine, but where you're sending them really sucks. So I looked at this one particular page and we blocked it out just for privacy reasons, but you can look at, now this may be seasonality, but if it's not, then something major happened to this page. So March through April, 7.65 e-commerce conversion rate, holy cow. Now May, it's down to 4.
And you'll also notice the visits are lower there and the transactions are lower, and this is a high traffic page that suddenly has very little traffic. So yeah.
So something's going on there, and obviously we just kind of pulled these numbers at random, but if you look at a source of traffic that should be converting for you and it's not, then maybe there's an issue.
And the question is, what changed? Identify what changed and react to that.
Yep. We talked about that. How much can I pay to get a visitor to my site?
Beat you to the punch on that one.
You did, man.
How far over can I get this guy?
Exactly. And so another thing you want to ask is, what other behaviors do buyers have in common on my site?
And be quick about this because we're past our time.
We're past our time. So looking at what other behaviors do buyers have on our site, so you can begin to focus on some micro conversions. If you want to watch videos, to sign up for something, some kind of step in the process that will lead them to a purchase. But that's also a good one to look at. And then you got to do this, and we preach this all the time. You have to measure, then test by making tweaks and changes, and then repeat the process.
And a lot of times we talk about in the context of the user experience, but also think about it in terms of how you're marketing, how you're driving traffic. Try it this way. Try your content and your ads a little bit different. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there that allow you to do that. So
all kinds of tools.
Yeah.
A couple of resources you want to check out. The Google Analytics Academy. If you're new to Google Analytics, check that out. Avinash Kaushik, we'll put that in the quotes. He's got a great blog on the subject. Kissmetrics. The Kissmetrics blog is also very valuable. Pull that up, search for analytics. Lots of great articles on.
Yeah, let's post those on our page so
Absolutely.
everybody has access to those.
Yeah.
That'd be great. So in terms of action you need to take, think about what questions you have for your data, and then take those questions to the data. You just got to think about what's driving my business success, and how can I measure that in a scientific way? How can I measure that in an observable way? Take that kind of question to your data and find a way to measure it, because if you're not measuring those key performance indicators, if you're not measuring those and you're not looking at those regularly, you're flying blind.
Yeah.
And for those who fell down the well and can't find yourselves, step back out, define your questions, those key questions, define those key metrics, and focus on those, and stop wasting your time digging around, banging on barren walls in the caves looking for gold mines.
Critical few versus the meaningless many.
Exactly.
You got to focus. I can't tell you how liberating that will feel, how much power you'll feel that you have once you focus on your critical few rather than meaningless many. We went warp speed, my friend.
I think we did.
This was a big topic.
We covered a lot of good stuff. There's a lot more that we could cover, but really appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you're watching us on replay, feel free to ask any questions, ping us on new topics you'd like to see cover. And even if you're up for an interview, you have a site, it's running into challenges, let's set up something. We'd love to interview you as well on the show live if you really want to be that exposed. And
that would be awesome.
Because it's huge, because we have like 17 million people every day watching us.
Global. We're huge in China right now.
Not quite yet. That's a lie. Okay, so anyway, connect with us on our social media, and until then,
stay classy.